Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Today we're going to be adding in a set of spotlights for our Can-am Maverick. Now I realize it already has a very substantial lighting system along with a huge light bar up top. But with the spotlights you can focus further down the trail, that way you've got time to react for whatever's coming at you. And with this thing, it's going to be coming at you really fast. So let's step over to the table and look at the kit that we're going to use to pull this off. Alright guys, once again we've gone with the kit from Can-am. But remember, you need to have at least two part numbers. First, you need to order the lights themselves. Second, you're going to need to order the appropriate wiring kit for whatever vehicle you're putting this on. Third, if your Maverick only has just the factory bumper on it, you're going to need to go with a different one that allows mounting of the headlights. Now, as far as the special tools, we really won't be using any for this, but I will call out any hand tools as we go along to make your life a little simpler and minimize your trips back and forth from the toolbox. Well, now that we've got our parts assembled, let me open up my toolbox and then we'll jump into this. All right guys, we're going to dive into this, and step number one is going to be to disconnect the battery. Well, to get to the battery, we need to go ahead and pull the front passenger seat out, and it'll be located behind it. With the seat completely out of the way, we'll go ahead and attack that center console, because that's where, of course, all our cabling is going to be run. Now, I have gone ahead and detached that lap belt from the top part of the harness. That way the seat can come all the way out, because it is, of course, run through the seat back. So that being said, let's go ahead and bungee this door back to where it can constantly hit me in the tail, and we're going to knock this thing out. When you're taking this apart, my advice to you is as you take apart each section, get all the nuts and bolts together, put them in a plastic bag, and label it. Otherwise, chances are you're going to make a mistake when it comes time to put all this back together. So let's reach in here with a 10mm and disconnect the negative side of the battery. Boy, that was loose. Wasn't a whole lot holding that on. Next, we're going to pull our right-hand side panel covers. Looks like somebody's tried to pop it off here a little bit. Let's just finish what they started. And then we also want to bring out this forward panel as well. We're going to go down to that bottom edge right here, pop it first. There we go. Now we should lift out. There we go. All right, there's one more panel I want to get out of the way. It's the center one. I should have a bolt somewhere over on this side. All right guys, with the panels and the seat out of the way, we're ready to run some cables. Then we're going to start with the primary cable. We're just going to take a straight shot. There's going to be a grommet with a zip tie around it, pretty much dead center of the machine. I think you can get to it from above. Cut that out and we should be able to send this end of the cable straight up to it. This is what we want coming back into the main cabin, and then eventually it's going to end up right here, or in this general area, where you've got a power access point right back here. Now you can see where someone had already previously installed the lighting system that went on top, the large light bar, and it is actually going to all three contacts, which is your negative, your positive, and then it's actually using an accessory down here to trigger a relay. Now as you're routing it, you can pretty much follow the existing wiring harness that's going up under the dash and then feed it forward. So up under the shock towers, right there. So we've got it pushed through, just lift it up and lay it out of the way for a moment. What we're going to do next is actually go ahead and mount up our lights up front, make the connections with that Y harness, And we want to tuck as much of it away from, of course, the winch and suspension and the radiator. We want it to stay clear of all that. And then we'll pull the slack back into the main cabin. And if there's any left over, then we're just going to loop it up and leave it under the center console. All right, so we've got our standard bolt. Go through. I decided to go toward the inside. So then you have a washer and then a flanged lock nut on the bottom. Now, you may choose to do your bracket first and then attach the light to the bracket, whichever way you want to go. Now, when you get close to tightening it down, there are a couple of slots that bolt needs to sit in on the bracket itself. So make sure you're lined up when you start to seat it. Just like it. And we're just going to aim them straight out for the time being. May need to adjust them a little bit later when it's nighttime when you have it outside. One down, one to go. Let's go ahead and put our connector on for our LED harness. So we want B to go to the red. So that's going to be up top in this orientation anyway. Then A, the black, is going to go down here. And if you didn't have that connector on hand, you can actually barely see where it says B and A on the connector itself. So we know we've got it right. There's your B. And you can feel and hear it click when it seats. And this one's ready to go. So here's what we're going to go after. We're going to bring the cable straight down for each of the LEDs. We're going to make the connection roughly about here, of course on the back side of the fascia, and then the main cable is going to be on the back side of the radiator, and we'll make a connection somewhere about right here to the main harness. I'm basically just feeding it over the top of the bumper bracket that holds on to the winch, of course. Now I basically have the cable on top of the winch. I'm going to make my connection right here and then tuck it back up behind and push it until you hear it click. That should do. It's about as clean as you get. Now, feed it right up the middle on the back side of the radiator fan. All right, guys, so we're away from all the suspension components. We're far enough away from the radiator where I'm not concerned, and we're dead center of all the other sections of the wiring harness that are following it straight back. So it's a good rule of thumb. If you're following the existing wiring harness, you're going to be okay. So at this point, we can make our connection. So we've got it pulled up, our connection made, and we should be able to clip it right here, dead center. So now we can pull back our excess, add a couple of zip ties. Don't forget to close down on that grommet that's coming through, and the chute will be through up front. Put one back around our grommet. All right, guys, that's pretty much going to do it under the hood. All we have to do now, go back into the main cabin, make a few connections, test it real quick. Then it's all a matter of just tidying up all the wires and maybe putting the unit back together. All right, guys, I do have one other piece of business I need to go ahead and take care of now. I have decided to put these in the center console, and although they have an area that is scribed where you can cut out, I want to go ahead and tell you, if you cut it out to that scribe, it's going to fit in there loosely. So you want to make sure that you cut it out as closely as you can to your plug. That way you've got a better chance of these grabbing onto the remaining plastic and holding it in place. So what I suggest is take your plug, look at it from the top. That way you can get an idea of just how much you need to take off. And come on, let's be honest. It's a lot easier to go in small increments in removing plastic because it's much more difficult to try to put it back, if not impossible. So here's where you need to be a little bit patient. I'll be using a die grinder to do this. If you want to drill it out and use a file, but I'm going to go with the die grinder. Take my time and get this to where we can go ahead and get our switch in, and then we'll come back and make our other connections. We'll go ahead and mark it with this pen or this Sharpie a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. So that's basically where we're going to take it to, is the inside edge of both those lines. And if we need to come out a little bit more, then we will. All right, we're okay on our width. A little too tight. Now we're just squaring off our corners because I think we're actually really close. I think that'll feed back down. Let's find out. Make sure you've got your connection in correctly. There we go. Make sure that's engaged. There. That's what really locks it in. Now, hopefully, she would just glide back in there. There. Now I'm happy. Mine, theirs. Mine, theirs. All right, guys, switch is in place. Now let's step over to the other side, make a few connections, test it, and then I think we can wrap it up. All right, guys, here's what we've got. We've got one connection with our LED wire going to our switch. Then we want to put our fuse up this direction where it can be accessed without pulling the seat. Last but not least, we're going to connect for our power, ground right here, and then we're going for that accessory terminal right there. And that's only going to be active when the machine is active. So we've got our main wire. Let's pull this loom back, and we just want to follow it back. We can leave the coil up front for right now. What I want to do, let's go ahead and feed it behind our primary wires. But before I do that, let's make our connection. Now we want to tuck it down. Now all we need to do, pull that bolt, put our black wire there, and our red wire down on the bottom. Heading up top. And if you don't already have any on there, make sure you've got some dielectric grease on those threads. Alright, get our little protective cover back in place. Now we can take the remainder of our wire, go ahead and coil it up. Tuck it dead center. Now, let's go ahead and connect up our battery, negative, and do a quick test. And we'll pretty much be done. Well, let's put the panels back in. Okay, kids, let's see what we've got. Wake her up. Look at there. Love it when a plan comes together. Well, all right, guys, that's pretty much going to wrap up this project. The only thing I have left to do now is just put the center console panels back in, get that seat remounted, and then we can take it out tonight and aim those lights. Well, listen, if you need these or any other parts or accessories for your machine, why don't you come see us at Partzilla.com and we can get you taken care of. If you have any questions or comments about this project, why don't you leave them in the section below and I'll do my best to answer them. And hey, if you like what you see, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you keep up with whatever I'm working on next. We just want to say thank you for shopping here with us at Partzilla, and we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a great day.